The royal decree bore Ailsa's name in blood-red ink, and every wolf in the Highland court watched as the Alpha King's own daughter was dragged before the marble steps where Pack Law had ruled for 300 years. Her wrists were bound with iron chains that burned against her skin, each link forged from the sacred metal that could hold even the strongest shifter. The morning sun cast long shadows across the courtyard, but none as dark as the one that fell across Ailsa MacCillion's heart as she stood before her father, King Fearchar, who refused to meet her eyes. The forbidden bloodline ends today. His voice echoed across the stone walls, cold and absolute. My daughter carries the mark of the Blackthorn Wolves, the very clan we swore a blood oath to destroy. She is no heir to this throne. The crowd's laughter started as a whisper, then grew into a roar that shook the ancient castle walls. Ailsa's crimson hair whipped around her face as she lifted her chin, silver eyes blazing with defiance even as tears threatened to fall. She had known this moment would come ever since the night she discovered the truth, that her mother, the beloved Queen Moira, had been a Blackthorn wolf hiding in plain sight, and that Ailsa herself carried the dual bloodlines that could either unite the warring packs or destroy them both. Before we continue this story of betrayal and impossible love, tell me the city you're watching from so I can send you a hug, because what happens next is going to break your heart before it heals it. Father, please. Ailsa's voice cracked, but Fearchar raised his hand, silencing her. You are no daughter of mine. The royal decree has been signed. You are banished from these lands, stripped of your title, your name, and your birthright. Should you ever return, Pack Law demands your immediate execution. The head councilwoman, Liasaid of Clan Douglas, stepped forward with a twisted smile on her weathered face. She had waited 20 years for this moment, ever since she discovered that Queen Moira was not the purebred Highland wolf she claimed to be. Liasaida's own daughter, Senga, stood beside the throne, already wearing the silver circlet that should have been Ailsa's. The usurper's eyes gleamed with triumph. Strip her of the royal marks, Liasaid commanded, her voice dripping with satisfaction. 2 guards approached Ailsa, one carrying a blade heated white-hot in the forge fires. The traditional punishment for royal betrayal was brutal. They would burn away the sacred wolf tattoos that marked her as heir to the throne, leaving only scars and shame. Ailsa's breath came in sharp gasps as the first guard tore the silk sleeve from her left arm, exposing the intricate silver wolf that ran from her shoulder to her wrist, the mark she had received on her 16th birthday when she had been named crown princess before the entire realm. The heated blade descended. Ailsa screamed, but the blade never touched her skin. A shadow fell across the courtyard, massive and impossible. The temperature dropped so suddenly that frost formed on the marble steps, and every wolf in the assembly felt their animal instincts scream danger. The guard holding the blade stumbled backward, his face pale with terror, as a figure materialized from the morning mist like a nightmare given flesh. Cheenid the Crow King stood at the entrance to the courtyard, and the world seemed to hold its breath. He was legend made real, the rogue alpha who had rejected Pack Law and built an empire in the Shadowlands beyond the Highland borders. 7 feet of raw power wrapped in black leather and violence. His dark hair fell past his shoulders, and his eyes were the color of winter storms. Scars crossed his bare arms, each one a testament to battles won and enemies destroyed. The crow tattoo that covered half his face marked him as an outcast, a king without a kingdom, a wolf without a pack. No one had seen Cheenid in 5 years, not since the night he had challenged Fearchar for the throne and been defeated, barely escaping with his life. The stories said he had gone mad in the wilderness, that he commanded an army of rogues and outcasts, that he could kill a man with a single look. Those stories, Ailsa realized as their eyes met across the courtyard, had not been exaggerations. Interesting timing for an execution. Cheenid's voice was gravel and smoke, carrying easily across the silent assembly. Especially when you're executing the only legitimate heir to the Highland throne. King Fearchar rose from his seat, his own wolf rising to the surface, golden eyes beginning to glow. You have no authority here, rogue. Leave before I have you hanged for trespassing on royal ground. Cheenid's laugh was dark and dangerous. Authority? Well, but I have something far more valuable. He took a step forward, and 20 guards immediately drew their weapons. He didn't seem to notice. His gaze remained fixed on Ailsa, and she felt something electric pass between them, something that made her wolf stir for the first time since the chains had been locked around her wrists. "I have the truth." "There is no truth but pack law," Liasade interjected, moving to stand beside the king. "The girl carries forbidden blood. She must be banished." "The girl," Chinad said softly, and somehow that quiet tone was more threatening than any shout, "is the daughter of Moira Blackthorn, yes. But what you conveniently failed to mention in your little trial is that Moira was not just any Blackthorn. She was the last direct descendant of the first wolf, the pure bloodline that predates both Highland and Shadowland clans. Which makes Ailsa MacKillian the only wolf alive who can claim true royal heritage over all the packs." The courtyard erupted into chaos. Wolves began shouting, some in outrage, others in disbelief. Senga's face went pale, and Liasade's carefully constructed composure cracked, revealing the panic beneath. But Fearchar simply stared at Chinad with an expression that Ailsa couldn't read. Was it shock, or had he known all along? "You lie," Fearchar said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Do I?" Chinad pulled something from inside his leather coat, a scroll sealed with wax that bore a symbol Ailsa recognized immediately. The first wolf's mark, the ancient seal that had not been used in over 2 centuries. "This is Moira's birth record, authenticated by the Council of Elders before they were conveniently disbanded 20 years ago. Funny timing that. Right around the time a certain king married a mysterious woman with no past and convinced everyone she was a simple Highland wolf." Chinad's eyes narrowed as he looked at Fearchar. "You knew what she was, didn't you? You married her specifically because of her bloodline, thinking you could use it to legitimize your own claim to power. But then you realized that her heritage made your daughter more powerful than you could ever be, and suddenly your blood oath to destroy the Blackthorns became very inconvenient." "Enough!" Fearchar's roar shook the stones. His transformation began, golden fur rippling across his skin, but Chinad didn't move, didn't even flinch. "Go ahead," the Crow King said quietly. "Transform. Attack me. Prove to everyone here that I'm lying. Or..." He paused, letting the word hang in the air. "You could tell them the truth. Tell them that you've been planning to kill your own daughter since the day she was born, waiting for the perfect moment to eliminate the one threat to your stolen throne." Ailsa's world tilted. She looked at her father, the man who had taught her to ride, who had braided her hair when she was small, who had told her bedtime stories about brave wolves and honorable kings, and saw the truth written in his eyes. Not surprise, not denial, just cold calculation. "You knew," she whispered. The chains around her wrists suddenly felt like they weighed nothing compared to the weight of this betrayal. "Mother told you what she was, and you married her anyway. You used her. You used me. I protected you," Fearchar snarled, his transformation receding as he struggled to maintain control. "I gave you a life of luxury, of safety. All I asked in return was your obedience and your silence. You asked for my death." Ailsa's voice grew stronger, fueled by a rage she had never known she possessed. "You created a law banning Blackthorn blood just so you could eventually use it against me. How long have you been planning this? Since I was 10, 15. Or did you mark me for execution the moment I was born?" Senga stepped forward, her hand moving to the ceremonial dagger at her waist. "She's a threat to the stability of the realm. The law is clear." "The law," Chinad interrupted, his voice cutting through Senga's words like a blade, "is whatever the true heir declares it to be. And unless I'm mistaken, that heir is currently in chains." He moved then, so fast that the guards didn't have time to react. One moment he was standing at the courtyard entrance, the next he was beside Ailsa, his hand wrapped around the iron chains. His skin should have burned. Iron was toxic to all shifters, but Chinad simply squeezed, and the metal shattered like glass. Ailsa gasped as the chains fell away, the burning sensation immediately fading from her wrists. Chinad caught her as she stumbled, one arm wrapping around her waist, and for a moment they were frozen there, her back against his chest, his breath warm against her ear. "Trust me," he whispered, so quietly that only she could hear. "Just for the next 60 seconds. Trust me, and I'll give you back everything they tried to steal." She should have said no. Should have pushed him away. This was the Crow King, the monster from every cautionary tale. The rogue who had killed his own pack members rather than submit to unjust authority. But his arm around her waist felt solid and real, and his heartbeat against her back was steady and sure. And for the first time since she had discovered her mother's secret, Ailsa didn't feel alone. "I trust you," she breathed. Chinad released her, but only so he could turn her to face the assembly. His hand remained on the small of her back, a silent gesture of support. When he spoke, his voice carried to every corner of the courtyard. "I, Chinad of the Shadowlands, called Crow King and Master of the Rogue Territories, do hereby invoke the ancient right of challenge and protection. This woman, Ailsa, daughter of Moira Blackthorn and rightful heir to the First Wolf's throne, is under my protection. Any who seek to harm her must first go through me." The courtyard fell silent. The challenge and protection was an ancient tradition, one that predated even pack law. It meant that Chinad was offering himself as Ailsa's champion, that he would fight to the death anyone who threatened her. It also meant something else, something that made several of the elder wolves gasp in recognition. It meant he was claiming her as his mate. "You can't," Lyasaid started, but Chinad's expression stopped her mid-sentence. "I can and I have. Pack law is clear. Once the challenge is invoked, no harm can come to the protected party until the challenge is resolved through formal combat or—" He paused, and Ailsa swore she saw a hint of a smile cross his scarred face. "Through the union of the protector and the protected in a blood oath more binding than any marriage. A true mate bond." Ailsa's breath caught. She had heard of true mate bonds, of course. They were the stuff of legends, the mythical connection between two wolves whose souls were literally intertwined. But they were supposed to be rare, 1 in a million, and certainly not something that happened between a disgraced princess and a rogue king she had met exactly 3 minutes ago. Except something was happening. She could feel it, a pull in her chest that drew her toward Chinad like gravity, like magnetism, like coming home to a place she had never been. Her wolf, which had been silent and subdued since the chains had first bound her wrists, was suddenly alive and alert, reaching out toward Chinad's wolf with a recognition that transcended logic or reason. "No," Firchar said, but there was desperation in his voice now. "I won't allow it. She's my daughter." "She's your victim," Chinad corrected coldly. "And under ancient law, my right to protect supersedes your right to harm. So here's what's going to happen. You can accept the challenge and face me in single combat, and we both know how that will end. Or you can accept the inevitable and acknowledge Ailsa's true heritage and her claim to the throne. There is a third option," Lyasaid said, and her smile was vicious. "We could invoke council intervention." The words fell like stones into still water, sending ripples of shock through the assembly. Council intervention was the nuclear option, the one rule that could override even the ancient rites. It required a unanimous vote from all 7 council members, and could only be used in cases of extreme threat to pack stability. If invoked, it would strip Ailsa of all rights and protections, reducing her to the status of a rogue wolf with no pack, no name, and no law to shield her. "You wouldn't dare," Chinad said, but there was uncertainty in his voice for the first time. "Council intervention requires unanimity. You'd need all 7 votes." Lyasaida's smile widened. "Councilman Alasdair." An elderly wolf stepped forward, his face grim. "I vote for intervention." Councilwoman Ailey, a woman with iron-gray hair, nodded. "Intervention." One by one, the council members declared their votes. For 5. All voting to strip Ailsa of her protections and declare her an enemy of the state. Councilman Tormod. Lyasaid asked the final member, a middle-aged man who had been Moira's personal advisor before her death. "Your vote decides Ailsa's fate." Tormod looked at Ailsa, and she saw conflict in his eyes. He had known her mother. had perhaps even known the truth about Moira's heritage. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he spoke. "I abstain." The courtyard erupted into chaos. An abstention wasn't the same as a no vote. It meant the council intervention failed, but it also meant that Tormod hadn't been willing to stand up for Ailsa's rights. It was cowardice dressed as neutrality, and everyone knew it. "Coward," Lyasaid spat, but the damage was done. Without unanimity, the council intervention had failed, which meant Chinid's challenge and protection still stood. Firchar looked at his daughter, and for just a moment, Ailsa thought she saw regret in his golden eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by the cold calculation of a king who had just lost a crucial battle but not yet the war. "Fine," he said quietly. "The challenge stands. But hear this, Chinid. If you truly claim this woman as your mate, then you accept all the responsibilities and burdens that come with protecting her. Every enemy she has made becomes your enemy. Every crime she is accused of becomes your crime. And when the full truth of her bloodline comes to light, when the other packs learn that the Blackthorn line still lives, they will come for her. They will come with armies and fire and fury, and they won't stop until both of you are dead." "Let them come," Chinid said simply. His hand tightened on Ailsa's back. "I've been fighting wars since before your daughter was born. One more won't make a difference." Firchar's expression hardened. "Then you are both banished from Highland territory. You have until sunset to leave these lands. If either of you is found within our borders after dark, the sentence is death." It wasn't the victory Chinid had been hoping for, Ailsa realized. He had wanted to force Firchar to acknowledge her claim, to restore her birthright. Instead, they were both being exiled, sent out into the wilderness together like characters in some dark fairy tale. But at least she wasn't facing it alone. Chinid bowed, the gesture mocking in its formality. "As you wish, your majesty. Come, Ailsa. Let's leave these cowards to their conspiracy and their fake throne." He took her hand, the first time their skin had touched without the barrier of chains or clothing, and Ailsa felt the electric shock of connection race up her arm and straight to her heart. His hand was rough with calluses, warm despite the morning chill, and when his fingers laced through hers, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. Together, they walked through the crowd of jeering wolves. Some threw stones, others spat. Ailsa kept her head high, her silver eyes forward, refusing to give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. Chinid's presence beside her was a shield. His mere proximity enough to keep the bolder wolves from trying anything more violent than words. They were almost to the courtyard gates when a voice called out, "Ailsa!" She turned to see Tormod pushing through the crowd, his face anguished. He pressed something into her hand, a small leather pouch that clinked with the sound of coins. "Your mother wanted you to have this," he whispered urgently. "She gave it to me before she died, made me swear to protect you if the truth ever came out. I'm sorry I couldn't do more, but I was a coward," Ailsa finished, but her voice was gentle. "I know. Thank you for this much at least." Tormod's eyes filled with tears. "She loved you so much. Everything she did, every lie she told was to keep you safe. Remember that when the darkness comes." Before Ailsa could ask what he meant, Chinid was pulling her forward again, through the gates and out into the forest beyond. The moment they crossed the boundary line, Ailsa felt something shift, the last connection to her home, her pack, her entire life, severing like a rope pulled too tight. She had been banished. They walked in silence for nearly an hour, following a narrow path that wound deeper into the old woods. Chinid seemed to know exactly where he was going, moving with the fluid grace of a predator in his element. Ailsa's mind was racing, trying to process everything that had happened. An hour ago, she had been a princess facing execution. Now she was a fugitive traveling with a notorious rogue king who claimed to be her mate. "Why?" she finally asked, breaking the silence. "Why did you help me? You don't know me. We've never even spoken before today." Chinid stopped walking and turned to face her. In the dappled forest light, he looked less like a monster and more like a man, tired, scarred, but somehow still handsome in a rough, dangerous way. "I know you," he said quietly. "Maybe not your name or your story, but I know you. I know what it's like to be born into a power you never asked for. I know what it's like to be betrayed by the people who were supposed to love you. And I know what it's like to be told you're a monster just because of the blood in your veins." He reached out and gently tilted her chin up so she was forced to meet his storm-gray eyes. "Besides, the mate bond doesn't lie. The moment I saw you standing there in chains, my wolf recognized you. It wasn't a choice or a strategy. It was inevitability." Ilsa's heart was pounding. "I felt it too. But how is that possible? Mate bonds are supposed to develop over time, through proximity and shared experience. They don't just appear out of nowhere. They do when the bond is fated." Chinad released her chin but didn't step back. True mates, the ones bound by destiny rather than choice, recognize each other instantly. It's rare, almost unheard of, but it happens. Usually when the universe decides two wolves are meant to change the world together. Change the world. Elsa laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I can't even change my own circumstances. I've been stripped of everything. My title, my home, my family. What possible impact could I have on the world?" Chinad's expression grew serious. "You're the last descendant of the first wolf, Elsa. Do you understand what that means? The first wolf was the original alpha, the one who established the laws and traditions that every pack still follows. Her bloodline was supposed to be the bridge between all wolves, the neutral ground where Highland and Shadowland, pack and rogue, could all coexist." He gestured to the forest around them. "For 300 years, the packs have been divided. We've fought wars over territory, resources, and ancient grudges that no one even remembers the origins of. Thousands have died. Thousands more live in fear and poverty, rejected by the established packs and forced to survive in the wilderness like animals. But you could unite them. You carry both Highland and Blackthorn blood. You're the living embodiment of the peace we've been fighting for." Elsa shook her head. "That's a lovely fantasy, but I'm just one woman. Even if I wanted to unite the packs, which I'm not sure I do, considering how well that just worked out for me, I have no army, no resources, no political power. I'm a banished princess with nothing but the clothes on my back and whatever's in this pouch Tormod gave me." She opened the leather pouch and gasped. It wasn't just coins. Nestled among the gold pieces was a ring. Her mother's ring, the one Moira had always worn but never explained. It was silver, set with a moonstone that seemed to glow with its own inner light, and engraved around the band were symbols that Elsa didn't recognize. "That's the seal of the first wolf," Chinad breathed, staring at the ring with something like awe. "I've only seen drawings of it in ancient texts. If you have that ring, Elsa, you have more power than any army could give you. That seal is recognized by every pack, every clan, every wolf alive. It's the symbol of absolute authority." Elsa slipped the ring onto her finger, and immediately she felt a surge of energy run through her body. Her wolf, which had been subdued and quiet, suddenly roared to life, stronger and more powerful than she had ever felt it before. The forest around her came into sharp focus. She could hear the heartbeat of a rabbit 50 yards away, could smell the rain that was still hours from falling, could feel the pulse of life in every tree and stone. "What's happening to me?" she gasped, falling to her knees as the power overwhelmed her. Chinad was beside her instantly, his arms around her shoulders. "The ring is awakening your true heritage. Your mother must have been suppressing it somehow, keeping your full power dormant so Char wouldn't realize just how dangerous you could become. But now..." He helped her stand, steadying her as she adjusted to the new sensations flooding through her body. "Now you're becoming what you were always meant to be. A true alpha. A queen." The word hung between them, heavy with implication. Queen. Not princess. Not heir. Queen. As if Chinad already saw her as a ruler in her own right, not just a symbol or a political tool. "I don't know how to be a queen," Elsa admitted, her voice small. "Neither did I when I became a king," Chinad replied with a slight smile. "But we figure it out as we go. Speaking of which, He pulled away from her and whistled, a sharp sound that echoed through the trees. Within seconds, wolves began to emerge from the shadows. 10, 20, 30 of them, all rogues by the look of their mismatched clothing and battle scars. They moved with military precision, forming a protective circle around Ailsa and Cheenid. "My guard," Cheenid explained. "They've been watching since we left the castle. I wasn't about to walk into Fearchar's territory without backup, challenge and protection or not." A massive grey wolf approached, transforming mid-stride into a hulking man with a scarred face and cold blue eyes. "We heard everything, boss." Council tried to pull the intervention card, but it didn't stick. "What's the plan?" Cheenid looked at Ailsa, and she realized he was waiting for her decision. These were his wolves, his people, but he was giving her the choice about what happened next. She thought about her father, sitting on his stolen throne. About Lyasaid and Senga, already planning how to consolidate their power. About all the wolves who had laughed as she was dragged through the courtyard, who had thrown stones and jeered at her humiliation. Part of her wanted revenge. Wanted to march back to that castle with Cheenid's army and tear down everything her father had built on lies and betrayal. But another part, the part that her mother had carefully nurtured, the part that carried the first wolf's legacy, knew that vengeance would only perpetuate the cycle of violence. "We go to the Shadowlands," she said finally, her voice stronger than she felt. "If Cheenid is right, if I really can unite the packs, then I need to start with the wolves who have been cast out and forgotten. The rogues, the outcasts, the ones who have no voice and no home. If I can earn their loyalty, their trust, then maybe, just maybe, we can build something new. Something better than what the old packs have become." The grey wolf looked skeptical. "That's a pretty speech, princess, but words don't mean much in the Shadowlands. You'll need to prove yourself. Prove you're not just some pampered royal slumming it with the rogues until Daddy takes you back." "Donnell," Cheenid said, a warning in his voice, but Ailsa held up her hand. "No, he's right. I haven't earned your trust. I haven't earned anything." She looked around at the circle of hardened warriors, meeting each of their eyes in turn. "But I'm willing to work for it. I'm willing to fight for it. And I'm willing to die for it, if that's what it takes to make things right." Donnell studied her for a long moment, then slowly nodded. "We'll see. Actions matter more than words in our world. But..." He glanced at Cheenid. "If the Crow King says you're his mate, that counts for something. He's never steered us wrong before." "Thank you," Ailsa said quietly. They traveled for 3 more days, moving deeper into the wild territories that bordered the Shadowlands. Ailsa learned quickly that life with the rogues was nothing like her privileged upbringing in the castle. They slept on the ground, ate whatever they could hunt or forage, and kept watch in shifts because danger could come from any direction. But she also learned that the rogues had a fierce loyalty to each other, a bond forged in shared hardship and mutual survival. They told stories around the campfire at night, tales of battles won and comrades lost, of narrow escapes and hard-earned victories. And slowly, cautiously, they began to include Ailsa in their circle. Cheenid was a constant presence at her side, teaching her the skills she would need to survive in this new world. How to track prey through the forest. How to fight with tooth and claw instead of relying on weapons. How to read the subtle signs in nature that warned of approaching danger. He was patient with her mistakes, encouraging when she succeeded, and never once made her feel weak or inadequate. And at night, when the others were asleep and it was just the 2 of them on watch, they talked. Really talked. In a way Ailsa had never been able to talk with anyone at court. She told him about her mother, about the secret lessons Moira had given her in the old ways, the traditional magic and wolf lore that the modern packs had mostly forgotten. About how Moira had died when Ailsa was 15, officially from an illness but in reality from poison, something Ailsa had only figured out years later, when she found the empty vial hidden in her father's private study. Cheenid told her about his own past, about growing up as the son of a Highland alpha who ruled through fear and brutality. About the day he had challenged his father's authority and been branded a traitor, forced to flee with a handful of loyal followers. About building an army from nothing, gathering the outcasts and rejects and forging them into a force that even the established packs had learned to fear. "Why the crow?" Ailsa asked one night, tracing the black tattoo that covered half his face with her fingertips. They had grown comfortable with casual touch over the past few days, the mate bond pulling them together even as they both tried to maintain some semblance of propriety. Cheened captured her hand and pressed a kiss to her palm, sending shivers down her spine. Crows are survivors. They're intelligent, adaptable, and they thrive in places where other creatures would die. They're also symbols of transformation, death and rebirth. When I left the Highland Pack, I died to my old life and was reborn as something new. The crow felt right. "It suits you," Ailsa murmured. "Though I think you're more than just a survivor. You're a builder, leader. These wolves would follow you into hell if you asked them to. Would you?" The question was soft, almost vulnerable. Ailsa met his storm-gray eyes and felt the truth settle into her bones. "Yes, I would follow you anywhere." The kiss was inevitable. His lips met hers with a gentleness that contradicted his fearsome reputation, and Ailsa felt the mate bond flare to life between them, a golden thread connecting their souls. This was right. This was real. Everything else, the banishment, the betrayal, the uncertain future, faded away until there was only this moment, only the two of them and the undeniable truth of what they were to each other. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Cheened rested his forehead against hers. "I should apologize for moving too fast, but I won't. I've waited my whole life for you, Ailsa. I didn't even know I was waiting, but the moment I saw you, everything made sense." "Don't apologize," she whispered. "I feel it too." They arrived at the Shadowlands on the 4th day, and Ailsa's breath caught at the sight. She had expected darkness and decay, the wasteland of nightmares that Highland propaganda had always described. Instead, she found a thriving settlement built into a massive canyon system, with hundreds of wolves living in carved stone dwellings connected by rope bridges and wooden walkways. Gardens grew on terraced levels, and the sound of children playing echoed off the canyon walls. "Welcome home," Cheened said, watching her reaction carefully. The word felt strange and yet somehow perfect. This place, these people who had been rejected and cast out just like her, this was where she belonged now. But their arrival had not gone unnoticed. A crowd was gathering at the main entrance to the settlement, and at the front stood a woman with silver hair and eyes like chips of ice. "So," the woman said, her voice carrying across the canyon, "the Crow King returns, and he brings a Highland princess to our doorstep. Have you forgotten everything we stand for, Cheened? Have you forgotten why we left the established packs in the first place?" Cheened's jaw tightened, but his voice remained calm. "Catriona, I haven't forgotten anything. But circumstances have changed. This is Ailsa MacCailian, daughter of Moira Blackthorn and the last heir of the first wolf's bloodline. She has been banished from the Highland Pack and claimed as my mate. She seeks sanctuary in the Shadowlands." Catriona's eyes narrowed as she studied Ailsa. "The first wolf's bloodline is a myth, a fairy tale told to pups to make them behave. You're asking us to believe that this pampered princess is somehow our salvation." "I'm not asking you to believe anything," Ailsa said, stepping forward before Cheened could respond. "I'm asking for a chance to prove myself. I know I come from privilege. I know I've never had to struggle the way you have. But I also know what it's like to be betrayed by the people who were supposed to protect you. I know what it's like to have everything stripped away because of circumstances beyond your control." She held up her hand, showing Moira's ring with its glowing moonstone. "My mother died to keep this bloodline secret. My father tried to have me executed to keep his power. I've lost everything except my life, and even that is only because Cheened was brave enough to challenge an entire court. So no, I'm not your salvation. I'm not your savior or your queen or anything else. I'm just a woman who wants to fight for something better than what we've had. And if you'll let me, I'd like to fight alongside you." The silence stretched out, heavy and tense. Then, slowly, Catriona smiled. It was a cold smile, calculating, but there was respect in it. "Pretty words. Let's see if you can back them up with action. Tomorrow at dawn you'll face our entrance trial. If you pass, you're welcome in the Shadowlands. If you fail, she shrugged. Well, the canyon floor is a long way down. That night, as Ailsa lay in the small stone dwelling that Cheened had prepared for her, she felt the weight of everything crashing down. The trial tomorrow would determine her future, her place in this new world. But more than that, it would determine whether she had the strength to be the person she claimed to be. The leader these wolves needed, the partner Cheened deserved, the heir to a legacy that had been buried for too long. She must have dozed off because she woke to find Cheened sitting beside her bed, his hand gently stroking her hair. The moonlight streaming through the window cast shadows across his scarred face, making him look both dangerous and heartbreakingly tender. You should be sleeping, she murmured, not pulling away from his touch. So should you. But we're both too nervous about tomorrow. He smiled slightly. The trial isn't as bad as Catriona made it sound. She's testing your courage more than your skill. What exactly does the trial involve? Cheened hesitated, and that hesitation told Ailsa everything she needed to know. It was going to be dangerous, possibly deadly. You have to descend to the bottom of the canyon using only the old rope ladders, some of which haven't been maintained in years. Then you hunt and kill a shadow stag, one of the massive deer that live in the canyon depths. They're twice the size of normal deer and 10 times as aggressive. After that, you climb back up carrying the stag's heart as proof of your kill. Ilsa's stomach dropped. She had never hunted anything larger than a rabbit. Had never climbed anything more challenging than the castle walls when she was sneaking out as a teenager. And if I fall, you die. Cheened's voice was blunt, honest. But you won't fall. I'll teach you everything you need to know tonight. We have hours before dawn. They spent the night in intensive training. Cheened showed her how to test rope before trusting her weight to it, how to distribute her body to maintain balance on unstable surfaces, how to use her wolf senses to track prey through difficult terrain. He was a patient teacher, correcting her mistakes without judgment, encouraging her progress without false praise. But more than the physical training, he taught her something more important. Confidence. Not the false bravado she had worn at court, the princess persona she had cultivated to hide her insecurities. Real confidence, born from understanding her own capabilities and accepting her limitations. You're stronger than you think, he told her as the sky began to lighten with approaching dawn. Not because of your bloodline or your title, but because you've survived everything they threw at you and you're still standing, still fighting. That's true strength. Ailsa kissed him then, pouring all her gratitude and fear and hope into that kiss. When they pulled apart, she could see her own emotions reflected in his storm-gray eyes. Come back to me, he whispered against her lips. Always, she promised. The entire settlement gathered at the canyon edge as the sun rose, painting the rocks in shades of gold and crimson. Catriona stood at the front, her expression unreadable as Ailsa approached the ancient rope ladder that descended into shadow. The rules are simple, Catriona announced, her voice carrying across the assembled crowd. Descend to the canyon floor. Hunt a shadow stag. Return with its heart. Do all of this before sunset or you fail. Use your wolf form if you wish, but know that the ladders are designed for human hands. Choose wisely. Ailsa looked down into the canyon depths. The bottom was barely visible, shrouded in morning mist and shadow. The rope ladder swayed in the wind, looking impossibly fragile. She could feel dozens of eyes on her, watching, waiting to see if the pampered princess would break. She thought about her mother, who had hidden her true nature for 20 years to protect her daughter. About Cheened, who had risked everything to save a woman he barely knew. About all the wolves who had been cast out and forgotten, who were watching to see if she was worthy of their trust. Then she grabbed the rope and began to descend. The first 100 feet were the hardest. Her hands, soft from years of court life, began to blister almost immediately. The rope burned against her palms, and her arms shook with the effort of controlling her descent. But she remembered Cheened's instructions. Test each rung before trusting it, Keep her weight centered, breathe through the fear. Halfway down, one of the rungs snapped beneath her foot. For a heart-stopping moment, Ailsa swung out into empty air, her full weight suspended by her burning hands. The crowd above gasped, and she heard Cheenid shout her name. But she didn't fall. She found her footing on the next rung, steadied herself, and kept going. Her wolf was howling inside her, urging her to shift, to use claws instead of soft human hands. But Ailsa knew that if she shifted now, in this precarious position, she would lose the fine motor control needed to navigate the damaged ladder. So she endured. Rung by burning rung, she descended into the canyon depths. When her feet finally touched solid ground, Ailsa collapsed to her knees, gasping. Her hands were raw and bleeding, her arms trembling with exhaustion. But she was alive. She had made it. Now came the hunting. The canyon floor was a different world from the settlement above. Ancient trees grew here, twisted and gnarled, their branches forming a canopy that blocked out most of the sunlight. The air was thick and humid, filled with the scent of moss and decay and something else, something wild and dangerous. Ailsa shifted into her wolf form, and immediately her senses sharpened. She could smell the shadow stag now, a musky scent mixed with fresh vegetation. Her wolf wanted to charge forward, to chase down the prey with tooth and claw. But Ailsa forced herself to be patient, to stalk carefully through the undergrowth. She found the stag drinking from a stream in a small clearing. It was massive, easily 8 feet tall at the shoulder, with antlers that spread like tree branches and eyes that glowed with an eerie red light. This was no normal deer. It was something ancient, perhaps magical, a creature that had survived in these depths for generations. Ailsa circled downwind, keeping low to the ground. Cheenid had taught her that the key to hunting large prey was patience and precision. Wait for the perfect moment, then strike fast and hard at a vital point. The stag raised its head, nostrils flaring. It had scented something, though not Ailsa yet. She held perfectly still, barely breathing, waiting for it to return to drinking. That's when she heard the growl behind her. Ailsa spun to find herself face to face with 3 rogue wolves, their fur matted and their eyes wild with hunger. These weren't Cheenid's rogues. These were the truly outcast, the wolves who had been rejected even by the Shadowlands settlement. Dangerous, desperate, and standing between her and escape. The largest wolf spoke, his voice rough from disuse. Well, well, a Highland princess playing at being one of us. How touching! Ailsa's hackles rose, but she forced her voice to remain steady. I'm not playing at anything. I'm completing the entrance trial. The trial. The wolf laughed, a harsh barking sound. You think Catriona actually expects you to succeed? This is the execution disguised as a test. She wants you dead, princess, and she's counting on the canyon to do what your father couldn't. The words hit like physical blows. Was it true? Had Catriona sent her down here knowing she wouldn't survive? But even as doubt crept in, Ailsa remembered the look in Cheenid's eyes, the absolute certainty that she could do this. Then I'll prove her wrong, Ailsa said quietly. And I'll prove you wrong too. Now move aside or what? The lead wolf moved closer, lips pulled back in a snarl. You'll fight us. 3 against 1. You really are as stupid as you are privileged. Not 3 against 1, said a voice from above. Ailsa looked up to see Donnell, Cheenid's grey-furred second-in-command, perched on a branch overhead. 2 more of Cheenid's wolves emerged from the shadows on either side of the clearing. The Crow King said to let her handle the trial herself. Donnell continued, his voice casual but his body tense and ready for violence. But he didn't say anything about interference from scavengers. So here's what's going to happen. You 3 are going to disappear back into whatever hole you crawled out of, and we're going to pretend this never happened. Or. His smile was all teeth. We settle this the old way. The 3 rogue wolves exchanged glances, clearly calculating their odds. Then, with snarls of frustration, they melted back into the shadows. Donnell looked down at Ailsa. Don't mistake this for help with your trial. The stag is still yours to hunt. But Chinid would have my hide if I let you get ambushed by scavengers. Consider this evening the playing field. Then he and the other wolves disappeared as silently as they had arrived, leaving Ailsa alone with her racing heart and the shadow stag, which had bolted during the confrontation. Now she had to track it all over again, except now it would be on high alert. Perfect. It took 2 hours of careful stalking before Ailsa found the stag again, this time in a rocky area near the canyon wall. The creature was nervous, ears swiveling at every sound. Ailsa knew she would only get one chance. If she missed, the stag would disappear into the maze of boulders and she would never find it again before sunset. She crept forward, using every shadow, every boulder for cover. Her heart was pounding so hard she was sure the stag would hear it. Closer, closer. Just a few more feet and she would be in striking range. The stag's head shot up. It had heard something, not Ailsa but something else in the canyon. For a split second, it was perfectly still, broadside to where Ailsa waited. She struck. Her wolf form covered the distance in 3 powerful bounds, launching herself at the stag's throat. Her jaws closed on flesh and she tasted blood, hot and copper. The stag screamed, a sound no normal deer could make, and tried to throw her off. Its antlers swung wildly, one point catching Ailsa's shoulder and tearing through fur and skin. But she didn't let go. She bit down harder, shaking her head the way Chinid had taught her, going for the vital arteries. The stag's struggles grew weaker, then stopped. Ailsa released her grip and shifted back to human form, clutching her bleeding shoulder. The wound wasn't deep, but it hurt like fire. Still she had done it. She had actually done it. Using the knife Chinid had given her, she carefully cut the stag's heart free. It was massive, the size of both her fists together, still warm with residual life. She wrapped it in leaves and began the long climb back up. The climb was worse than the descent. Her shoulder screamed with every movement, her blistered hands could barely grip the rope, and exhaustion was setting in hard. More than once, Ailsa felt herself slipping, felt the rope sliding through her bloody fingers. But each time, she thought of Chinid waiting for her at the top. Thought of proving Catriona wrong. Thought of her mother, who had been so much stronger than anyone knew, hiding her true nature for decades to protect her family. I am Ailsa, daughter of Moira Blackthorn, she whispered to herself as she climbed. I am the heir of the first wolf. I do not break. I do not fall. The words became a rhythm, matching her movements. Pull, breathe, climb, repeat. When her hand finally grasped the canyon edge and she hauled herself over the top, the sun was just touching the horizon. She had made it back with minutes to spare. Catriona stood waiting, her expression carefully neutral. The entire settlement had gathered again, watching in silence as Ailsa struggled to her feet and walked forward on shaking legs. She held out the stag's heart, her hand trembling but steady enough. I've completed the trial, Ailsa said, her voice hoarse. Do I have sanctuary? Catriona took the heart, examining it carefully. Then slowly she smiled. A real smile this time, not the cold calculation from before. You have more than sanctuary, girl. You have respect. She raised the heart high so everyone could see. Ailsa MacCailian has passed the entrance trial. She is one of us now, a wolf of the Shadowlands. The crowd erupted into cheers. Ailsa's knees finally gave out, but Chinid was there to catch her, sweeping her into his arms as if she weighed nothing. You did it, he murmured into her hair, his voice thick with emotion. Gods, Ailsa, you actually did it. Told you I would come back to you, she managed. Then everything went black. She woke 3 days later in Chinid's dwelling, her shoulder bandaged and her hands wrapped in healing salves. Chinid was asleep in a chair beside her bed, his head resting on his arms. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, and Ailsa realized he must have been keeping vigil the entire time she was unconscious. Chinid, she whispered, and his eyes snapped open immediately. Ailsa, thank the gods. He was beside her in an instant, his hand cupping her face with infinite gentleness. You've been out for 3 days. The wounds got infected. Something in the stag's blood was toxic. Catriona said it's common with shadow stags, part of what makes them so dangerous to hunt. But I'm okay now. Ailsa tried to sit up and immediately regretted it as pain lanced through her shoulder. Easy. You need to rest. The infection is gone, but you're still weak. Chined helped her settle back against the pillows. A lot has happened while you were recovering. Things are complicated. Ailsa's heart sank. What kind of complicated? The Highland Pack knows you survived. Worse, they know you passed the entrance trial and have been accepted into the Shadowlands. Your father is calling it an act of war, claiming that I kidnapped you and forced you to join the rogues. He's demanded the Council of All Packs convene to address the situation. The Council of All Packs was the highest authority in the wolf world, a gathering of representatives from every major pack and territory. It was rarely called, only in cases of extreme crisis or when disputes threatened to escalate into full-scale war. He's going to try to force the council to order my execution, isn't he? Ailsa said quietly. Chined nodded grimly. Or at minimum, order your return to Highland custody. Either way, it's bad. The council is already skeptical of the Shadowlands. We're too independent, too willing to challenge traditional authority. If your father can paint this as an aggressive act on our part, he might convince them to sanction us, cut off our trade routes, force the other packs to treat us as enemies. Then we go to the council meeting, Ailsa said, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. We tell them the truth. Show them the evidence of my mother's bloodline. Prove that my father is the one breaking sacred law by trying to kill the rightful heir. It's not that simple. The council meets on neutral ground, in the old temple at the border between Highland and Lowland territories. If we go there, we'll be surrounded by packs loyal to your father. It could be a trap. It could also be our only chance to tell our side of the story. Ailsa reached for his hand, lacing her fingers through his. Chined, we can't hide in the Shadowlands forever. Eventually this will come to a head. Better to face it on our terms when we're prepared, than to wait for your father to build an army and come to us. Chined was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing circles on the back of her hand. You're right. I know you're right. But the thought of walking you into danger, into a room full of wolves who want you dead. I've already faced death and survived, Ailsa reminded him gently. And I won't be alone this time. I'll have you beside me. That makes all the difference. The Council of All Packs convened 2 weeks later, giving Ailsa just enough time to recover from her injuries and prepare for the confrontation ahead. Chined insisted on bringing his full guard, 50 of his best warriors, all seasoned fighters who had proven themselves in countless battles. The old temple was exactly as ancient as its name suggested, a massive stone structure built before the packs had divided, when all wolves had supposedly lived in harmony under the first wolf's guidance. The irony of holding this particular meeting in this particular place was not lost on Ailsa. They arrived at dawn to find representatives from 7 major packs already assembled. The Highland Pack, of course, led by King Fearchar. The Lowland Pack, traditional rivals to the Highlands. The Coastal Pack, wealthy traders who controlled the profitable sea routes. The Mountain Pack, isolationists who rarely left their alpine territory. The Forest Pack, mystics who claimed to maintain the old traditions. The Desert Pack, fierce warriors from the southern territories. And the Island Pack, seafarers who had remained neutral in most conflicts. Chined's Shadowlands rogues were the 8th faction, though many of the assembled wolves clearly didn't consider them legitimate. Ailsa could feel the hostile stares as they entered the temple, could hear the whispered insults and threats. But she kept her head high, the first wolf's ring gleaming on her finger, and walked beside Chined as if she belonged exactly where she was. The council chamber was a circular room with a raised platform in the center. Each pack's representative sat in designated areas around the circle, with neutral ground in the middle where those being judged would stand. Fearchar sat in the Highland section, Senga beside him wearing a crown that should have been Ailsa's. Lysaid stood behind them, her expression triumphant. The council elder, an ancient wolf named Aongas who claimed to remember the last great council over a century ago, called the session to order by striking a massive gong. The sound reverberated through the chamber, demanding silence. "We are gathered to address a grave accusation," Aongas intoned, his voice surprisingly strong for someone so old. "King Fearchar of the Highland Pack accuses Cheenid of the Shadowlands of kidnapping Princess Ailsa MacKillian, corrupting her with false promises, and forcing her to join his rogue faction against her will. These are serious charges. Cheenid, how do you answer?" Cheenid stood, and the room seemed to hold its breath. "The charges are completely false. I did not kidnap Ailsa. I saved her from execution at the hands of her own father." The chamber erupted in chaos. Wolves shouted, some in outrage, others in disbelief. Aongas struck the gong again, restoring order. "That is a serious counter-accusation," Aongas said gravely. "King Fearchar, did you order your daughter's execution?" Fearchar stood slowly, his expression sorrowful, a masterful performance for someone who had tried to have his own child killed. "I ordered her banishment, yes. She violated our most sacred law by carrying the blood of our sworn enemies, the Blackthorn Wolves. Pack law was clear. She could no longer remain in Highland territory." "Banishment is not execution," one of the coastal pack representatives pointed out. "It becomes execution when you strip someone of all protection and send them into the wilderness alone," Cheenid countered. Fearchar knew exactly what he was doing. He couldn't afford to kill her openly, so he created circumstances where she would die anyway and he could claim it wasn't his fault. "These are mere allegations," Lysaid spoke up from behind Fearchar. "Where is your proof? Where is your evidence that the king intended anything more than lawful banishment?" This was it. The moment they had been preparing for. Ailsa stood, and all eyes turned to her. "I have proof," she said clearly. "And it's not just proof of my father's betrayal. It's proof that challenges the very foundation of pack law as you understand it." She held up her hand, showing the ring with its glowing moonstone. Several of the older wolves gasped in recognition. "This is the seal of the first wolf, passed down through my mother's bloodline. My mother was Moira Blackthorn, yes, but she was not just any Blackthorn. She was the last direct descendant of the first wolf herself, the one who established pack law and united all wolves under a single banner. That makes me the rightful heir not just to the Highland throne, but to authority over all packs." The chamber erupted again, this time in genuine shock. Even Aongas looked shaken, his ancient eyes fixed on the ring with something like awe. "Impossible," Fearchar said, but his voice lacked conviction. "The first wolf's bloodline died out centuries ago." "It went into hiding," Ailsa corrected, "because wolves like you hunted them. The first wolf believed in unity, in cooperation between all packs. But the alphas of her time wanted power for themselves, so they divided the territories and created the rigid hierarchies we have today. They hunted down anyone who challenged their authority, including the first wolf's own descendants." She moved to stand in the center of the platform, addressing all the assembled wolves. "My mother hid her heritage to protect me. But even in hiding she taught me the old ways. She showed me that pack law as we practice it now is a corruption of what the first wolf intended. We've turned into exactly what she feared, warring factions more interested in power and territory than in the welfare of our people." "And you think you can change that?" one of the mountain pack representatives asked, his tone skeptical. "One girl with a ring and a story." "Not alone," Ailsa agreed. "But with help. With wolves who are willing to remember what we're supposed to be instead of what we've become. I think we can change everything." Aongas raised his hand for silence. "The seal of the first wolf is not something that can be faked. Its magic is unique, unmistakable. If Ailsa truly carries that ring, if it answers to her as its rightful bearer, then her claim has merit. We must test it." "Test it how?" Cheenid asked warily. "The old way. The seal responds only to those of true bloodline, and it grants them authority over all wolves, even against their will. If Ailsa is who she claims to be, she should be able to command any wolf in this room to obey her, regardless of their pack or rank. Ailsa's heart was pounding. She had felt the ring's power awakening her wolf abilities, had sensed its energy flowing through her. But she had never tried to use it to command another wolf. What if it didn't work? What if the ring had chosen her but she didn't know how to use it properly? Choose your subject, Aongas instructed. Who will you command? Ailsa looked around the room. She could choose Cheenid, who was already her mate and would likely obey anyway. Or one of his wolves, who respected her. But that wouldn't prove anything. Her eyes landed on Fearchar. My father, she said quietly. I command King Fearchar of the Highland Pack. The room went silent. Fearchar's expression hardened. His wolf rising to the surface, ready to resist. No one could command an alpha against their will. It was impossible, a violation of the fundamental nature of wolf hierarchy. Ailsa held up her hand, the ring catching the light. She didn't speak aloud. Instead, she reached out with her will, with the power that was awakening inside her, and commanded with every fiber of her being. Kneel. For a moment nothing happened. Fearchar stood proud and defiant, his golden eyes blazing with fury and fear in equal measure. Then slowly his knees began to bend. He fought it. Everyone could see the strain on his face, the way his whole body trembled with effort as he tried to resist. But the seal's power was absolute. Inch by inch, his knees lowered until they touched the stone floor. King Fearchar, the proud alpha who had ruled the Highland Pack for 30 years, was kneeling before his banished daughter. The chamber erupted once more, but Ailsa barely heard it. She released the command, and Fearchar slumped forward, gasping. She felt no triumph, only a deep sadness. This was her father, the man who had once carried her on his shoulders and taught her to howl at the moon. And it had come to this. The test is satisfied, Aongas declared, his voice shaking with the weight of what they had just witnessed. Ailsa MacCaelian carries the true bloodline of the first wolf. By ancient law, her authority supersedes all pack hierarchy. This changes everything, the Lowland Pack representative breathed. If she has that kind of power, she could unite the packs by force, someone else finished. Make us all bow to her will. Or, Ailsa said firmly, drawing their attention back to her, I could choose not to. I could choose to lead by earning your trust rather than commanding your obedience. The power to force compliance exists, yes. But my mother taught me that true leadership comes from service, not domination. She looked at each pack representative in turn. I'm not asking to be your queen. I'm asking for a chance to prove that we can be better than what we've become. The Shadowlands have shown me that wolves from different packs, different backgrounds, can work together when given the chance. Can build something beautiful from the ruins of what was broken. Beautiful words, Lysaid sneered. But words don't feed hungry pups or protect vulnerable territories. The pack system exists for a reason. Without strong hierarchy, without clear authority, there would be chaos. There's already chaos, Donnell spoke up from where he stood with Cheenid's guard. There are hundreds of rogue wolves living in the wilderness because your precious pack system rejected them. Cubs dying because their parents were cast out for minor infractions. Mates separated because they came from different packs, and love is less important than politics. Other voices joined in, wolves from various packs sharing stories of injustice, of loved ones lost to rigid pack law, of potential wasted because talent and character mattered less than bloodline and status. Aongas listened to all of it, his ancient face thoughtful. Finally, he raised his hand for silence once more. The council has heard testimony from both sides. We have witnessed proof of Ailsa MacCaelian's bloodline and authority. Now we must decide. How do we respond to this revelation? Do we acknowledge her claim? Do we maintain the status quo? Or do we forge a new path forward? I have a proposal, Ailsa said before anyone else could speak. Give me 1 year. Let me work with the Shadowlands and any other wolves who choose to join us. Let me prove that a different system can work, one based on merit and character rather than bloodline and birth. At the end of that year, we reconvene the council. If I've failed, I'll step aside and accept whatever judgment you pass. But if I've succeeded, if I can show you a better way, then I ask that you consider real change. And in the meantime, the Desert Pack representative asked, what happens to existing pack structures? Nothing, unless individual packs choose to change. I'm not demanding revolution. I'm offering an alternative. Wolves who are happy with their current packs can stay. Those who want something different can join us. Let's see which system actually serves our people better. It was a reasonable proposal, and several of the representatives looked intrigued. But Fearchar wasn't done fighting. You're asking us to legitimize a rogue faction that threatens everything we've built, he said, his voice still rough from being forced to kneel. To give my treasonous daughter free rein to undermine pack authority and steal our members. I will not support this. Your support is noted, Aongas said dryly. But you are only one voice among 8. We vote now. All in favor of granting Ailsa MacKillian's proposal, 1 year to prove her alternative system, after which we reconvene to assess, indicate by raising your hand. Cheenad's hand went up immediately, of course. Then, to Ailsa's surprise, the Coastal Pack representative raised their hand. Then the Island Pack, the Forest Pack, even the Lowland Pack, traditional rivals to the Highlands. 5 votes in favor. Fearchar abstained, as did the Mountain Pack and the Desert Pack, not voting against but not supporting either. The motion carries, Aongas declared. Ailsa MacKillian, you have your year. Use it wisely. The council session ended in a flurry of private conversations and political maneuvering. Several pack representatives approached Ailsa privately, expressing interest in her plans or offering cautious support. Others avoided her entirely, clearly uncomfortable with how the power dynamics had just shifted. But through it all, Cheenad remained at her side, a steady presence in the chaos. When they finally made it back to their quarters in the temple guest wing, Ailsa collapsed onto the bed with a groan. That was exhausting, she said. And we only bought ourselves a year. What if I can't deliver on my promises? What if this all falls apart? Cheenad sat beside her, pulling her into his arms. Then we'll deal with it together. But Ailsa, you were magnificent in there. The way you stood up to your father, the way you commanded the room. That wasn't the scared princess I met in chains a few weeks ago. That was a queen. I don't feel like a queen, Ailsa admitted. I feel like I'm making this up as I go along and hoping it works out. That's what leadership is, Cheenad said with a slight smile. No one really knows what they're doing. We just pretend confidence and make the best decisions we can with the information we have. Ailsa turned to look at him, really look at him. This man who had saved her life, who had believed in her when she didn't believe in herself, who had challenged an entire pack system to protect her. Why did you do it? She asked softly. Why did you risk everything for me that day in the courtyard? You said it was the mate bond, but we barely knew each other. You could have walked away. Cheenad was quiet for a long moment, his fingers tracing idle patterns on her arm. Because I saw myself in you. Saw what I had been. Trapped by circumstance, betrayed by family, forced to be something I wasn't. And I remembered how desperately I wished someone had helped me when I was in that position. How much easier it would have been if I hadn't had to claw my way out alone. He cupped her face gently. But it's more than that. The mate bond doesn't lie, Ailsa. The moment I saw you, my wolf knew. You were mine, and I was yours, and nothing else mattered. I would have fought every wolf in that courtyard to keep you safe. Would have faced the entire council alone if that's what it took. You might still have to, Ailsa murmured. My father isn't going to give up. Neither is Lyasaid. They have too much to lose if I succeed. Let them plot. We have a year to build something they can't tear down. Over the next few months, that's exactly what they did. Word of the council's decision spread quickly, and wolves began trickling into the Shadowlands from all territories. Some came because they had been rejected by their birth packs. Others came because they were curious about this new system, this promise of something better. Elsa worked tirelessly, establishing new structures and systems. Instead of hierarchy based on birth, she created merit-based leadership positions. Instead of rigid pack law, she developed guidelines that could adapt to individual circumstances. Instead of excluding wolves who didn't fit traditional molds, she found ways to include them and utilize their unique talents. It wasn't easy. There were growing pains, conflicts, moments when Elsa doubted whether any of this could actually work. But slowly, steadily, the Shadowlands settlement grew into something remarkable. A true community where wolves from dozens of different backgrounds worked together, not because they were forced to, but because they chose to. Chinid became her partner in every sense, helping her navigate the politics and complexities of building a new society. Their mate bond grew stronger with each passing day, until Elsa couldn't imagine her life without him. He was her anchor when doubt threatened to overwhelm her, her advisor when difficult decisions loomed, her comfort when the weight of responsibility felt too heavy to bear. But even as they built something beautiful in the Shadowlands, trouble was brewing in the Highland territory. Reports reached them of Firchar's activities. He was building alliances with the desert and mountain packs, the two who had abstained from the council vote. He was spreading rumors about Elsa, claiming she had used dark magic to fake the seal's power, that she was planning to forcibly subjugate all wolves under her authority. "He's preparing for war," Donnell said grimly during one of their strategic meetings. "All the signs are there. He's stockpiling weapons, recruiting fighters, making treaties with packs that historically hate each other. The only thing they have in common is fear of what you represent. How long before he moves against us?" Elsa asked. 3 months, maybe 4. "He'll wait until close to when the council reconvenes, time it so that if he defeats you, he can present it as a righteous defense against a dangerous upstart. That way, even if some packs condemn his actions, they'll be too late to stop him." Elsa looked at Chinid, seeing her own worry reflected in his eyes. They had always known this confrontation was coming, but she had hoped for more time. "We need allies," she said finally. "Real allies, packs who will stand with us not just in principle but in actual combat." The coastal pack seemed supportive. "The coastal pack won't risk their trade routes for a war that doesn't directly affect them," Donnell finished. "We need to offer them something they can't refuse. Something that makes supporting you worth the risk." Over the next weeks, Elsa threw herself into diplomacy. She traveled to the coastal territories with a small delegation, offering them exclusive trading rights with the Shadowlands and access to the skilled craftsmen who had joined their community. She met with the forest pack elders, appealing to their respect for ancient traditions and showing them documents that proved the seal's authenticity beyond any doubt. Slowly, carefully, she built a coalition. Not all the packs joined. The desert and mountain packs remained firmly in Firchar's camp. But the coastal, forest, and island packs all pledged support, not just in words but in warriors and resources. Still might not be enough. Firchar's forces outnumbered theirs, and he had the advantage of fighting on familiar territory. But at least they wouldn't be alone. The attack came on a cold morning in early spring, just days before the council was set to reconvene. Firchar didn't bother with subtlety or strategy. He brought an army of 300 wolves directly to the Shadowlands border and demanded Elsa's surrender. "She has violated the terms of her banishment by building a rival power base," Firchar's messenger proclaimed, reading from an official-looking scroll. "She has stolen members from legitimate packs, corrupted them with false promises, and threatens the stability of all wolf territories. King Firchar offers her one chance: surrender herself for judgment, and the Shadowlands settlement will be spared. Refuse, and we will take her by force." Elsa stood on the canyon rim, looking down at the army assembled below. Behind her, the entire Shadowlands community had gathered, nearly 500 wolves now, including the reinforcements from allied packs. Children, elders, warriors, crafters, healers, all looking to her for guidance. "No," she called down, her voice amplified by the canyon acoustics. I won't surrender to a tyrant who tried to murder his own daughter. If you want me, Fearchar, come and take me yourself. Face me in single combat, as pack law demands when an alpha is challenged." There was silence. Then Fearchar himself stepped forward from the army, and Ailsa's breath caught. He looked older than she remembered, haggard and worn. Whatever he had become, whatever he had done, he was still her father, the man who had once loved her. "You think I won't fight you?" Fearchar shouted up. "You think because you're my blood I'll hesitate?" "I think you're afraid," Ailsa called back. "Afraid that if you face me alone, everyone will see the truth. That you're not fighting to protect pack law or stability. You're fighting to protect your stolen throne." Fearchar's transformation was instantaneous, human form melting into massive golden wolf in the span of a heartbeat. He howled, a sound of pure rage and challenge, and charged up the canyon path. Cheenid moved to intercept, but Ailsa stopped him with a hand on his chest. "This is my fight. He's my father. It has to be me." "Ailsa, trust me," she said, echoing the words he had spoken to her all those months ago in the courtyard. "Just trust me." Then she shifted, her own wolf form emerging, silver and crimson, marked with the glowing symbols that had appeared when she first put on her mother's ring. She was smaller than Fearchar, less experienced in combat, but she carried something he didn't, the absolute conviction that she was fighting for something worth dying for. They met halfway up the path in a collision of fur and fangs. Fearchar's experience showed immediately. His strikes were precise, targeting vulnerable joints and soft tissue. Ailsa's shoulder, barely healed from the shadow stag attack, reopened within seconds, blood matting her silver fur. But she didn't back down. She used her smaller size to her advantage, darting beneath his attacks, going for his legs to destabilize him. One of Cheenid's lessons came back to her. A smaller wolf can beat a larger one if she's willing to be patient. Wear them down. Make them waste energy. They fought for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. Ailsa's world narrowed to teeth and claws, to the rhythm of attack and dodge, to the metallic taste of blood, both her own and her father's. Then Fearchar made a mistake. He overextended on a lunge, and for just a second his throat was exposed. Ailsa struck, her jaws closing on the vulnerable flesh. Not hard enough to kill, she couldn't bring herself to do that, but hard enough to make her point. She held him there, pinned, feeling his pulse hammering against her teeth. One bite. That's all it would take to end this, to remove the threat he posed forever. But she released him instead. Fearchar shifted back to human form, gasping, blood streaming from the wounds on his throat. "Why?" he choked out. "Why didn't you finish it?" Ailsa shifted as well, standing over him in human form. "Because I'm not you. Because I don't believe that killing our enemies is the only way to win. And because despite everything you've done, you're still my father. I still remember the man you used to be, before power corrupted you." She held out her hand to help him up. For a long moment, Fearchar just stared at it. Then slowly he reached up and grasped it. The watching armies erupted into shocked murmurs. Ailsa helped her father to his feet, supporting him as he swayed. "I could have killed you a dozen times," Fearchar said quietly, so only she could hear. "That day in the courtyard when you were in chains. Any day since. But I couldn't do it. Couldn't quite bring myself to give the final order." "I know," Ailsa said. "Part of you still loved me. Still remembered that I was your daughter before I was a threat to your power." Fearchar's laugh was bitter. "Love. What good is love when it makes you weak? When it prevents you from doing what must be done? Love isn't weakness," Ailsa said firmly. "It's the only thing that makes us strong. Without it, we're just animals fighting over territory. With it, we're something more. Something better." She turned to address both armies, her voice carrying across the canyon. "This war is over before it truly began. King Fearchar and I have reached an understanding. He returns to the highlands with his forces. The Shadowlands remains independent. And when the council reconvenes in 3 days, we present a united proposal. A new system where packs maintain their autonomy but cooperate through voluntary alliance rather than forced hierarchy. You're letting him go, someone from the Shadowlands crowd shouted. After everything he did. I'm choosing to build a future instead of punishing the past, Ailsa responded. If we want to create something better, we have to be willing to forgive. Not forget, never forget, but forgive. Fearchar looked at his daughter, and for the first time in years, Ailsa saw genuine emotion in his eyes. Your mother would be proud of you. Proud of who you've become. She would be disappointed in what you became, Ailsa said quietly. But maybe it's not too late to change that. Fearchar didn't answer. He simply turned and walked back down the canyon path, his army parting to let him through. One by one they followed him, until the Shadowlands border was clear once more. Cheened appeared at Ailsa's side, his hand finding hers. That was either the bravest thing I've ever seen, or the most foolish. Possibly both. Definitely both, Ailsa agreed with a shaky laugh. The adrenaline was wearing off, and she could feel every injury, every bruise and cut from the fight. But it was the right thing to do. I'm sure of it. 3 days later, the Council of All Packs reconvened in the old temple. This time the atmosphere was completely different. There was tension, yes, but also anticipation. Oh. The possibility of genuine change hung in the air like electricity before a storm. Ailsa stood before the council once more, but this time she wasn't alone. Cheened stood beside her, his presence a silent statement of unity. Representatives from the Shadowlands community stood behind them, rogues and outcasts who had found purpose, who had built something beautiful from nothing. Eongas struck the gong, calling the session to order. We have gathered to assess the results of Ailsa MacCailian's 1-year trial. The council will hear testimony, examine evidence, and render judgment on whether her alternative system has merit. Ailsa, you may begin. Ailsa stepped forward, and this time there was no trembling in her voice, no fear in her heart. She had faced death and betrayal and impossible odds. This was just another challenge to overcome. A year ago, I stood before you as a banished princess with nothing but a ring and a promise. Today, I stand before you as the leader of a thriving community of 500 wolves from 23 different territories and backgrounds. We have built a society where merit matters more than birth, where cooperation replaces competition, where every wolf has a voice in decisions that affect their lives. She gestured to the representatives behind her. These wolves are craftsmen, warriors, healers, teachers, farmers. They were rejected by the traditional pack system, told they weren't good enough, weren't pure enough, weren't obedient enough. But in the Shadowlands, they've proven that the system was the problem, not them. One by one, Shadowlands wolves stepped forward to give testimony. A young healer who had been cast out for questioning outdated medical practices. A warrior who had been rejected for refusing to execute a prisoner he believed was innocent. A teacher who had been silenced for teaching history that contradicted official pack narratives. Their stories painted a picture of a system that valued conformity over creativity, obedience over integrity, tradition over truth. When the last testimony was given, Eongas leaned forward. This is compelling evidence that your system works on a small scale. But can it work for thousands of wolves across multiple territories? Can it maintain stability without the rigid structures that have governed us for centuries? I believe it can, Ailsa said. But I'm not asking you to replace the current system entirely. I'm proposing something more flexible, a confederation of packs, each maintaining their own internal structure but agreeing to common principles. Freedom of movement between territories. Protection for wolves who are cast out unjustly. Dispute resolution through mediation rather than combat. Shared resources during times of hardship. She pulled out a document, the product of months of work with Cheened and their advisors. This is a proposed charter for the Confederation of Free Packs. It preserves pack autonomy while creating mechanisms for cooperation and mutual aid. It protects individual wolves from unjust persecution while maintaining reasonable standards for community safety. The council members passed the document around, reading it carefully. Ailsa watched their faces, trying to gauge reactions. Some looked intrigued, others skeptical. Fearchar's expression was unreadable. Finally, the lowland pack representative spoke. "This is remarkably well thought out. It addresses most of my concerns about losing pack cohesion while creating frameworks for the kind of cooperation we desperately need. I support it." One by one, the other representatives weighed in. The coastal pack supported it, seeing economic advantages in free trade and movement. The island pack supported it, appreciating the diplomatic solutions to conflicts. The forest pack supported it, recognizing echoes of the ancient traditions they valued. Even the mountain pack, after long consideration, agreed to a trial period. That left only Fearchar and the desert pack. The desert representative shook their head. "Too radical. Too much change too fast. I abstain." All eyes turned to Fearchar. He sat in silence for a long moment, his face carved from stone. Then he stood. "I spent 30 years building my power on the current system. I broke laws, betrayed trusts, even tried to kill my own daughter to maintain it. And for what? To rule over wolves who feared me but didn't respect me. To build a legacy of tyranny and lies." He looked directly at Ailsa. "My daughter showed me mercy when I deserved none. She chose forgiveness when vengeance would have been easier. She built something beautiful while I built something broken." Fearchar's voice grew stronger. "I support the charter, not because I expect forgiveness for my crimes, not because I hope to regain power in this new system, but because it's right, because it's what my wife died trying to protect, and because my daughter is a better leader than I ever was or could be." The chamber was silent. Then Aongas struck the gong one final time. "The vote is 7 in support, 1 abstention. The Confederation of Free Packs is hereby established. Ailsa MacCailian, as bearer of the first wolf seal and architect of this new system, you are recognized as the Confederation's first High Queen, not to rule over the packs, but to serve as arbiter, mediator, and guardian of the charter." Cheenid stepped forward then, and before Ailsa could react, he knelt before her. Not as a subject kneeling before a ruler, but as a partner acknowledging their equal partnership. "My queen," he said, his storm-gray eyes meeting hers with infinite tenderness and pride. The title that had once been mockery, that had been used to humiliate her as she was dragged through the courtyard in chains, was now spoken with reverence and love. Ailsa helped him stand, then turned to address the council one final time. "I accept this responsibility with humility and determination. I promise to serve all wolves fairly, to uphold the principles we've established, and to build a future where no one has to choose between their integrity and their survival, where love is stronger than law, and compassion guides our actions more than tradition." She looked out at the assembled representatives, at Cheenid beside her, at the Shadowlands wolves who had believed in her when no one else would. "They laughed when I was banished. They mocked me as I was dragged through the courtyard in chains. They called me traitor, mongrel, unworthy of the throne." Her voice grew stronger, filling the chamber with absolute conviction. "But I am Ailsa MacCailian, daughter of Moira Blackthorn, heir to the first wolf, and High Queen of the Confederation of Free Packs. I was forged in betrayal and tempered in exile. I was saved by a rogue king who saw worth where others saw only weakness. And I have built something that will outlast every empire built on fear and force." She smiled, fierce and radiant. "So let them laugh. Let them mock. Let them doubt. We will prove them wrong. Not with violence or domination, but with the simple revolutionary act of treating every wolf as worthy of dignity and respect. Together," Cheenid added, his hand finding hers, "we'll change everything." And in the weeks and months that followed, they did exactly that. The Confederation grew, pack by pack, as wolves saw what was possible when cooperation replaced competition. Borders that had been closed for centuries opened. Wolves who had been enemies for generations worked together to solve common problems. There were challenges, of course. Setbacks and conflicts and moments of doubt. But every time things got difficult, Ailsa remembered standing in that courtyard with chains around her wrists, remembered the sound of laughter as she was banished from her home. And she remembered the moment Cheened had appeared like a dark angel, had shattered her chains and called her "my queen," when she had every reason to believe she was nothing. That memory, more than any title or power, gave her the strength to keep fighting for a better world. Because she had learned the most important lesson of all: true queens aren't crowned by councils or born into power. They're forged in fire, tested by betrayal, and crowned by the loyalty of those who choose to follow them not because they must, but because they want to. And Ailsa MacCailian, once a banished princess, now High Queen of the Confederation of Free Packs, would spend the rest of her life proving worthy of that choice.